Hey everyone, Ron here from the Legacy of the King podcast. Firstly, before we begin the video, let me apologize for the late upload. As Nick will have mentioned yesterday, we had a few technical difficulties, but we resolved them now, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation we had. Alright, so here it is, episode 2. See you guys again soon. Hello everyone,
Hi everyone,
I'm Ron,
and I'm Nick.
and welcome to another episode of Legacy of the King.
Yes, episode 2.
We're doing well. We're doing well.
Very well,
Trying to stay as consistent as possible.
indeed.
Right. So, guys, we just want to thank you all again for all the support for our debut episode last week. We really appreciate it. We couldn't have done that without all of you that showed up and supported us. So, thanks so much.
Thank you again.
Right. We would also like to ask you to tell your friends to like, subscribe, share, because we have a goal that we set. We would like to get to 1,000 subscribers, because that way we'll be able to bring better content to you, because we don't want to keep giving you the same quality of lighting, of audio, of video. We want to constantly improve. We don't want to stay in one place. So please help us out. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell anyone that you could find. Like and subscribe. Go check out Legacy of the King on YouTube, and let's get to 1,000 subscribers.
We'd appreciate that greatly. And thanks again.
Right. So we have some things to talk about.
We have plenty things to talk about today.
Yeah, we have some things to talk about. But the first thing I think we should talk about is what does Legacy of the King stand for? Like what's our goal? What's our mission? I think that's important for people to know, because a lot of times, you've seen it in different um, on different platforms where people will try to tell the host of a podcast or the hosts of a podcast what they should talk about,
Right.
right? And I think it's important that we address that early, because we don't want that getting in to our program,
Correct.
right? So what do we stand for? Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, we stand for manhood. We stand for legacy. We stand for, as our last week episode stated, a strong foundation. It stands for respect. It stands for honor. It stands for balance in all aspects. It stands for greatness. And without all those things that I previously mentioned and so much more, we cannot achieve greatness. We cannot achieve balance. So we want to address things that cause imbalance. And although people may have opinions as I would have mentioned last week, it's nice to bring something to us so we may think about creating content, and bringing it to you guys. However, not everything that is brought is to us is lines up with what we are looking to build, looking to achieve, looking to reach, right? Because at the end of the day, our podcast is about enlifting or lifting up the society, trying to get society from where it is to somewhere better, you know, starting with us men, starting with women as well, but taking into consideration, looking at self, reflecting on self, and becoming better because it starts with you, it starts with me, it starts with us.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I agree with that. And piggybacking on that, I want to say that the mission of Legacy of the King is to uplift heterosexual men, heterosexual women, and rebuilding the heterosexual family. Right?
Agreed.
There there are persons that choose a different life,
Hmm.
right? Which is fine. Right? That's their choice. It's fine. Right? But it's in our interest to focus on the heterosexual man, the heterosexual woman, and rebuilding the heterosexual family because that family is the family that's broken, right? And I'm not homosexual, you're not homosexual. We don't have any acquaintances that are,
Hmm.
right? So it's not in our interest to speak on their matters, right?
Correct.
And if anyone has a problem with what I just said, right? My humble opinion, please find another podcast that is talking about what you would like them to talk about, right? We are not focusing on that, right? We are focusing on rebuilding the heterosexual family, right? Because that is our interest. Our interest is in nothing else,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so once we got that out of the way, we could continue, right?
Correct. So,
So we have some questions to answer, or we have answers to questions that we need to review. Which one is this first?
um, we have some. Okay, let's go through the question that we left our audience with last week. All
Sure.
right, we'll start with that, and so we'll just review the question again, and we got some responses. Right, we didn't get a lot, but what we did get was it had some information that we need to go through. All
Okay.
right.
Sure. Let's go.
So, just to review the question again for everyone. So, the question was, what do you believe are the components for a healthy family environment? That is, one that is able to raise children and could contribute significantly to the growth of a society.
Hmm. That was a good question. That was a really good question.
A very good question.
And what answers did we get?
So, the answers we got came from a Miss Patricia Cooper, aka Granny. Right, so I'll start with her first. Um, Also, before I do, thanks to those who responded to the question. Um, we greatly appreciate it. So her answer was parents must educate their children and be responsible for them in a healthy environment, listening to them. Example, if a child does not want to attend school, you may ask why, but you then explain that education is important. You do not beat them. This is where violence begins. But you must have patience in correcting them from home because society needs to have community, sharing family, and trusting that every human being be treated equally. Communication verbally, and communication verbally. Gated communities create discrimination and brings division as those who want to enter are left out. Parents are giving children material things, but they are not happy children, so they cheat. Instead of gaining knowledge, they are into games on their devices. They're into games on their devices. Parents, love your children. Find the time to have dialogue at family meals. Be less selfish and allow children to associate with others.
That's a long answer.
It was a very long answer.
That's a long answer. Wow. There are a lot of things to unpack
A
in that
lot.
answer. But the first thing I want to address is the education aspect, right? Um, yes, it is important that the parents give their children that educational platform. But what I think is even more important, and this is something that I believe a lot of parents don't do, and that is to teach their children how to think
Mm,
and not what to think,
very important.
right? Because if you only teach your children what to think, then we have generic children who can't solve problems, who believe that what they were taught by their parents is the truth when no one on this planet knows the truth.
Correct.
They can know pieces of the truth. They can do a truth, but no one could really know the truth. There's so much information, knowledge out there that we know, we know that we don't know, and we don't know that we don't know. So it's important to teach children to seek knowledge continuously and learn to decipher that knowledge, i.e., learn how to think. After you've been given information, after you've been given knowledge, how do you interpret that knowledge? How do you internalize that knowledge
Correct.
to now make certain judgments, to now make certain decisions, whether it be the way in which you vote,
Right.
the school that you send your child to, you eventually send your child to, the even things that are more trivial, the car that you choose to buy,
Yeah.
the clothes that you choose to wear, and eventually the life that you choose to live.
Because at the end of the day, bro, like what you just described there is pretty much each child has to create their own life, their own legacy. And by parents just giving them everything, right? And not quote unquote allowing them to freely think for themselves is a great setback, a great disadvantage to the child, right? It doesn't allow them to be them,
Hmm.
right? They don't have much, if anything at all, to contribute to the wider society because of that, you know. And you don't want little robots just running around the place, you know. Um, so yeah,
Yeah. And I believe that's actually one of the biggest problems right now. We have a lot of robots running around the place because most of our parents told us, go to school, get education. Nothing is wrong with that. But all most of the parents tell or told their children, go be a lawyer, go be a doctor, go be an engineer,
mhm,
right? But that is not the be all and end all as it relates to careers or professions that would provide value to society,
Right.
right? We need entrepreneurs. We need businessmen and women.
Right.
We need artists,
Correct.
musicians.
Hmm.
We need society is a multifaceted organism. It is not just built on logic and punching numbers and the bottom line, money.
Yeah.
It's not just about that. There are emotional aspects that keep society sane,
Correct.
right? And we tend to forget that. You know, a lot of parents would hear their children, their child wants to be uh, a musician
Hmm.
or or a music producer or a movie producer and say, "Oh, that doesn't make any money."
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, whoever told you that? Like, have you been seeing what has been going on in the past 30, 40 years? Where
Correct.
people have been making entire careers off of the creative arts. People haven't been seeing that. No, we have to open our eyes to the other avenues that are out there for our children.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
So we have another answer here. Um, this is from mom and dad.
Mhm.
It's a combined effort. It's a bit long as well, not as long as Granny's, but we'll
Mhm.
get there. So they mentioned
So
some.
before you start, guys, you see most of these answers are coming from family. We need more answers,
Yes, we need
right?
from the wider audience, from you guys, all
Right,
of you.
because the thing about family, family tends to be a little biased,
Yes, agreed.
so yeah.
So some basic requirements for a family environment include male and female in covenant with God in marriage and open to life. Commitment to love in good times and bad. Love is willing the good of another person. We then necessarily forget ourselves, our comforts, selfish desires, jealousy or pain, etc., and instead desire to serve our neighbor or loved ones through acts of charity. True love sets no conditions. It does not calculate or complain, but simply loves. Virtuous qualities, honesty, humility, faithfulness, forgiveness, and trust are tools. Commitment and support in the growth of family members. Understand that there are no perfect families, no perfect individuals. Knowledge of self, continuous listening, continuous learning. And finally, present but yet respect for individual space.
Hmm. A little less than your grandmoms, but a lot in there as well.
Yes.
And I think
Intensely
because of
packed.
yeah, and I think because of the content of of your parents' answers, I don't even think we should respond to that question now. That question is meant for an entire episode.
Yes.
Yeah, that requires an entire episode. Yeah, so I think we will hold off on responding to that one.
Stay tuned though, mom and dad. Stay tuned. Which I know you will.
Right. So we have to discuss questions that was asked by
Yes.
the viewers last week.
Correct. So, one question that came in was So I'll just address the question and then we'll answer one by one. All right. Um, the first question is, what qualifies us, you and I,
Mm-hmm.
to talk about parenting without being parents ourselves?
Mm. That's a really nice question, and I'll be very, very happy to answer it.
Before you continue, bro,
Mm-hmm.
these questions came in again from family.
Mm-hmm.
So this question is from mom.
Okay, no problem. So I don't know if parents realize this, right? But your children are observing. They may not seem like it, but they watch everything you do, everything you say, how you would have dealt with a situation that they were in, how would you have dealt with a situation that you all were in, and we then, paint pictures in our mind on whether or not, you know, these are qualities or choices or decisions that we ourselves would make as parents, right? Because one of the things that I think is important for the next generation is to observe the the virtues as well as the mistakes of the previous generation,
Mhm.
right? And we wouldn't get too much into it, but there were things that the previous generations would have done in parenting specifically that may not have worked, but they used it because it was used on them,
Correct.
right?
And also for the times.
And for the times, it was good for the times. But if we're being realistic, right, a lot of those things they won't work now because the children now are more intelligent,
Right.
right? You can't always beat a child into understanding, right? Children are very inquisitive, especially now. So they will always ask why, right? They will always want to know, why am I doing this? Why I have to do this? Why do we need to do this? Why do we have to go there? Why? But that is an important question. And you think about it, the parents from the last generation and maybe two or three generations prior, they hated answering that question, right? They would always quarrel,
Yeah.
right? And because of that, because we experienced it, we understand why that question is important, because we became adults and we still had those questions and we had to answer them for ourselves. And like we mentioned in the first episode, our goal is to give our children a platform so that when they get to our age, they don't have to start from scratch like we did. So that's the best way I could answer it. Give any time frame. I hope that's a good answer. Okay.
All right. So the second question, what does greatest let me just backtrack a little bit. So in the first episode, bro, we
Mm-hmm.
spoke about potential,
Mm-hmm.
right? So this question builds on that.
Okay.
So the question is, what does greatest potential mean?
What does greatest potential mean? Hmm. Okay. So I'm going to answer this question, but the answer that I'm going to give, I'm not sure. I don't know. Like, people might have different feelings about the answer. In my opinion, there is no such thing as greatest potential. Right? Everyone has potential. Potential in itself is unlimited. Right? Everyone has potential. Now, the limit of that potential we'll never know. What we should strive toward doing is to see where the limit is. Right? So it's not. I wouldn't phrase it as greatest potential. Or what does it's more like potential generally. What does potential mean? Right? Um, Potential to me is latent ability, ability hidden,
Right.
ability dormant, right?
That we haven't tapped
That
into
we
yet.
haven't tapped into yet. That is what potential means to me, right? So that means in order to realize that potential, firstly we have to know that that reservoir is there inside us, firstly, and then we have to figure out how do we get that potential out,
Right.
for it to become skill and eventually mastery. I
All
hope I
right.
answered the question again.
Okay, so we have some questions from Granny.
All right, keep them coming, keep them coming.
To Ronald,
Mhm.
what tools, again, this is piggybacking on last week's episode 1, about foundation. What tools did your father give you
Mhm.
to have a solid foundation?
Well, my father, God rest his soul, he was he was a very ambitious man given the circumstances he grew up in. And my father was very poor as a child. He he didn't have shoes. He went to school without shoes. He didn't. His pants, his school pants, was made out of the the bag that we put flour in. So for our international audience, we have a brand called Ibis flour, right? And it's made out of this thick kind of paper,
Right.
right? And they tie the bag at the top with twine. And my grandmother had to cut that up and sew it by hand to make the the trousers for my dad to be able to go to school. So they didn't even have enough money to purchase proper school trousers, right? So that was the first thing. The second thing, they didn't have enough money to send my dad to high school. So my dad started working at 30. He had to work on coconut estates. Mind you, this is the 1940s, 50s, 1950s, right? 1950s, Trinidad and Tobago was a very rural place, right? So we still had the remnants of colonialism. So it was the cocoa plantations, the coconut plantations, the sugarcane plantations, all of those. And my dad had to work on those plantations, and he would get 10 cents for 40 coconuts,
Wow.
right?
Different time.
Different time.
Very
Very,
different.
very different time. 10 cents for 40 coconuts, right?
And that was a lot.
And
back
that
then.
was a lot back then, right? And but the thing about my dad was that he was never satisfied with that. He never wanted to settle for that. He always knew there was another way, even given the circumstances. So when he was of age, at the age of 18, He was from Mayaro, by the way. So Mayaro is in East Trinidad, right? That's the east coast of Trinidad. The majority of um, government offices, government organizations, military organizations is in the west of Trinidad. Back then, there were no highways, right? And coming from a poor family, they didn't have a car, right? Didn't have money to travel from Mayaro to Port of Spain. So I think my dad did. He rode a bicycle from Mayaro to Port of Spain. Now, I don't know what was the distance on that exactly.
It's far. It's
It's
real far.
it's real,
It's real far.
real far.
Because it has taken us 2 hours
It takes us
with
about
car
2 hours by car
in this day and age
on a highway.
on a highway.
So he left Mayaro on a bicycle and rode to St. James to join the police force. Right? So that's the first tool, determination and ambition. Well, two tools,
Right.
determination and ambition. Knowing that there's better and doing what you can to get to where you want to get to. Right? And to go through the training, military training isn't easy. It's very hard,
Agreed.
especially in colonial times,
Agreed.
where you're essentially um, a British soldier in a sense, right? So there are certain levels that they had to upkeep, right? So to go through that, not everyone made it. Obviously, some people left halfway, and so that shows another tool, which is resilience, right? And then again, the ambition to be able to become a full-fledged police officer and then rise through the ranks quickly. Not easy, especially, okay, you're a man of African descent in a colonial country that is run by the colonial powers,
Right.
right? Your superiors don't look like you. And the mere fact that you could join the police force and go through the ranks in the speed that you did, right? That shows a different level of commitment, right? So again, commitment to a goal, right? And if we fast forward, he ended up becoming um, an inspector, and and he began acting as an assistant superintendent before he eventually chose to retire. And that was just before I was born, right? And after I was born, he was then able to pivot into a completely different industry. He became an insurance agent. And he was not only able to become an insurance agent, but to become one of the best insurance agents in his company, right? And the ability to pivot, right, to leave one industry, to go into an industry that you know nothing about, to now become one of the top guys in that industry. Again, that shows a level of commitment. It shows um, malleability, the ability to change, right? And I was able to see these things, see the commitment, see the drive, and this is into his 50s and 60s. To see him win awards, right? And given where he came from, I had to do something with my life, right? I couldn't have been given those tools and not do anything with it. One of the most amazing tools that he had that I only discovered last week. Was it last week? Oh no, this week was I didn't even know that he had it. I realized that I started to do it, but his ability to inspire people, the ability to to have that discernment in people, to understand people, to be able to read people, to know, okay, this person is good, this person not so much, this person will do this thing, this person has this tendency. He gave me that, and in order to get into whether it be entrepreneurship or the music industry or even to be able to work in a corporate environment, you have to have that discernment. You have to have people skills to that point. And I was fortunate that my dad had it and it was passed on to me. Some people have to learn it now, right? But it's important to learn. So my father gave me so many tools, and I hope I'm doing them justice, right? So, next grandma, I hope I answered your question. I hope that was as detailed an answer that would satisfy the question that you asked.
Yes. So I have a question. I'll read out the question, but the question is directed to me
Okay.
as well.
All right.
Also from Granny. And the question is, what foundation did I have?
Okay. I want to hear
This
this.
is a two-part question, by the way, but I'll start off by answering this first part. So, Granny, the foundation that I've had comes from the influence of all those around me. In particular, because I am now a man, the the two, for want of a better phrase, role models I had in growing up were my grandfather and my father. So they were the ones who taught me what it was in the earliest to be a man. In my later years, going to school, high school, um, up to now, I would say my brother Ronald has also influenced that foundation
Appreciate it.
because of the conversations we've had, the lessons learned um, through failure, as we've mentioned last week. We know failure all too well. But let me start off by talking a little bit about Grandpa, right? And the tools that he gave me for my foundation. So, just like your father, the times then were a lot different, right? So, this is from hearing stories through yourself, Granny, as well as Mom, about his upbringing. And for want of a better phrase, they used to call him the man behind the bridge because he used to live in a part of Trinidad, East Port of Spain, right, which is literally behind the bridge. Um, and again, just like your father, the the means of transport, the means of availability of things, the means of the powers that be, and basically the circumstances in which you come from are not in your favor. Again, the color of his skin, the family that he came from, it was a very large family. There were, if I remember correctly, about it was him and about 8 or 9 other siblings.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And again, education at that time was very different, or access to education, I should say, is very different as it is now. However, he did go to St. Mary's College, right? And eventually he got into politics, right? Through civil servants, and moved up the ranks as well. And he also moved up pretty quickly. He got very close to the Prime Minister at that time, Dr. Eric Williams, late great. Um, and he also was able to travel, right? He was an ambassador for Trinidad in some countries, such as Canada, Jamaica, and those were the more popular ones that I'm aware of. So again, it shows resilience, it shows commitment, because fighting through, struggling through the lack at that time, and also wanting on a deeper level to become better, to rise above your situation, that's basically your upbringing. And when I think of things like that, I think of a lotus. A lotus basically is born in mud, in all the muck and all this disgusting thing.
Impurities.
And yes, and becomes this most beautiful thing, and that again is the beauty of it. So my grandfather, God rest his soul as well, he taught me, apart from those things, honesty. He was a man, mom, you would would definitely agree on this. He was a man who never liked lies. He used to say, "Don't lie." He hated it, right? And he, as far as I know, and again from the stories, he never really beat his children, but he commanded this authority, right? That about his presence, that he didn't have to beat you, right? He didn't have to resort to violence, but he would just speak calmly but sternly while watching you. And that in itself says a lot, because some people think that being a man is about, you have to be aggressive, you have to be assertive, you have to be, this macho, egotistical or ego-filled person, but he was a lot different to all those things, Of course, there were certain times when he needed to be some of them, right? But he used wisdom as to when to apply it, right? And he was a man that left a great impact upon people, especially me. In fact, I had considered him my best friend, and he was he was truly something else. Um, Growing up, I spent a lot of time with him. Right, as a child, we used to have our adventures. In fact, I think mom got jealous about our adventures, right? Especially during vacation time, you know. And so I'll stop there with regards to him. Um, my dad, right, growing up with him as well, and he was also a man of honor in his own regard, but also a respectable man. Again, similar to my grandfather, he a lot of people gravitated towards him, right? Anywhere he went, a lot of people, especially in work or even outside of work, a lot of people would know him. And again, through his father, now deceased, um, would have spoken to him, and this again is through stories I've heard about his father being such a great man, such a respectable man, such a man of honor, and one who carries about himself in a particular way. And when those same people approach my dad, they would tell him he looks and operates just like his father. Right? So things like that are very strong foundations, right? Things that you would want to look up to, things that you'd want to emulate, things that you yourself would take a look back when upon seeing them and realize, especially as a child, this is new, this is strange, this is different, but in a good way, especially never being exposed to it before. And again, after time and time again, it continues to happen. You realize it then starts to sink in. It starts to come down and be like, I think these things are the things that I want to have. I want to portray as well, use as my tools for my foundation and moving forward. Now, obviously, those not in those exact words or as many words, but subconsciously, this will take place. So that's my answer. I hope I've answered your question, Granny. At least the first part. The second part, I've mentioned some of them in my answer just now, is where did you get your knowledge and wisdom from? So I would have got my knowledge and wisdom from everyone around me. I've been influenced by them. I've been influenced again from grandpa, dad, mom, yourself, Ronald, um, and everyone around us, as well as reading books, as well as researching things, gathering information, seeking knowledge, and the wisdom would have come from the application of that knowledge, when to use it. I mean, I'm still learning, very much so. Still a long way to go, but I have and I can see the improvement. And so the knowledge and wisdom, I would also say, would have come from a lot of my experiences through daily life, especially, and again, wisdom from learning from those experiences as well, which I mentioned previously. So, um, I would say that's where those came from. I hope again I answered your question, Granny. Um, we have some other questions from Granny.
Oh, wow.
Right, we almost there, almost there. So her other question is: do you agree that it has to be someone who is not human guiding you? This question is as it relates to our topic on
Intuition and
intuition
right.
last week.
Okay, okay. This question is for who? For us.
Yes.
Okay. I think it's a bit of both, you know. But I would say more on the non-physical side than the physical side. You know, let's say 70-30,
Mm.
right? Because again, like I mentioned last week, you know, we everyone has some level of intelligence on on this mundane reality, right? But there's an intelligence that a few people could tap into, and still there's a level of that intelligence that can only come to you or I, the individual, because that bit of information is reserved for you or me, right? And to be able to know that it's that, that's where the difficulty comes in, you know. And to have the awareness to know that is that, you know, and
That
to
word awareness.
yeah, and to listen to it as well, because we hear a lot of people say, you know, um, something told me to not do this, you know, and I went and do it, and look what happened.
Mhm.
Or something told me to do this, and I didn't do it, and look what happened. I've heard those things too many times, not so many times, too many times, way too many times, right? And that's where it is. I think yes, we we seek guidance from people that we look up to, but it's also important to listen to that still voice that says, "Go here, don't go here. Do this, don't do this,"
Mhm.
and listen to it, right? Because that makes the difference between an ordinary man and an extraordinary man, right? Not everyone would speak about it, which is fine, right? That's perfectly fine. But that is what makes the difference, right? The greatest men have had some connection to eternity. The greatest minds, you could ask like any one of them, whether it be Einstein, Nikola Tesla, any one of them. They may not have said it in the way you or I or anybody else would have wanted to be said. But the point is, they had the connection.
A higher power.
Yeah, and I think that's where the balance is. Yes, the books are good. Yes, mentors are good. That they are very important. But that extra,
Mhm.
right? The unquantifiable,
Right.
that that is what tips you over from ordinary to extraordinary.
Right. So it makes the source special.
Exactly. Right? And you've ever heard of special sauce.
Special sauce.
Yeah, that is what makes the sauce
Hmm.
that much tastier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to add to that, I don't have much to add because Ron said it. He said it. He finessed it.
Well, but you know, put the extra curve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would just add to that, Granny, by saying that, well, before that, the 70/30 was in favor of 70% being
The non-physical.
correct.
Yeah.
So I would add to that by saying that I agree that the majority has to come from outside. The guidance has to come from outside because of the fact that, as I mentioned last week, that if left up to our own devices as human beings, we would get ourselves into a lot of trouble.
Well, we could look at how the world is going right now, and you could see that
Yeah.
this is what happens when you leave humans to their own devices.
Yeah, hell in a handbasket.
Exactly.
You know? So I would agree that it has to, the majority of it has to come from outside. And also I would so the other percentage that is comes from within the intellect, um I would say, bringing back to the point, or coming back to the point, I should say, that we have to learn from our experiences. Only through learning from our experiences that that guidance and, for want of a better word, um sorry, I just lost train of thought. But um basically, that those experiences to help us become better is important and imperative that we learn from our experiences, right? So other than the majority being external guidance, we also need to improve through self-development, conscious self-development, by our experiences as well. So that's my little 2 cents on on top of Ron's answer. And the last question is, do you agree that the intellect that you have is not from book learning or education, but from within your soul?
Hmm. There's a interesting way the question was put. Do I agree? Um, I would say yes, but I would also add and say that also the intelligence, the intellect, the knowledge that I have now also comes from the experiences that I would have had in the life that I've lived so far. Because um, see, unless we have experiences, we would never know exactly what to do with the knowledge that we acquire. Right? We would have it, but we would never really know what to do with it. You know, it would just be knowledge, arbitrary knowledge. But to be able to apply that knowledge, we need to have experiences, whether good or bad. We need to have experiences that are going to shape us or induce the application of the knowledge, right? Some some knowledge comes naturally, right? Perfect example. I don't know if anyone knows this. I think, well, we would have mentioned it in the first episode, but Nick is a brilliant artist. Like Nick paints, draws, sculpts, right? No one taught him. So that is clearly not something that came from a book or a teacher or anything like that, right? Um, I am and have always been a natural born athlete. I was always an agile child, teenager, young adult. No one taught that to me. I always had good coordination. No one taught that to me.
What about writing?
Writing, right? All I
Storytelling, I should say.
oh
Storytelling.
yeah, storytelling. Yeah, no one really taught me to tell stories. Again, it's just something that was a part of me, and I think that is where you see the intellect and the intelligence that comes from your soul. That is where that stands out, right? Um, but the other things like let's say to be able to like for my case and maybe for your case to run a business, we had to learn um, what it takes to run a business. But some people have it naturally. Some
Right.
people just start like 9, 10, 11, and they have businesses in school and things like that. Different people are like your talents are essentially the intelligence that comes from your soul, right? And everyone has some talent or a number of talents, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have few people.
Yeah.
We don't have few people like that. So yeah. I hope I answered the question.
So to add to that, Granny, the the things that come naturally to us, as Ron said, would have come from within your soul. And the things that don't come so naturally or may not come naturally at all, but that we would like to achieve in this life, that we would like to gain, I would say has to come from education, external education, because of the fact that, as you mentioned, bro, um, businesses, for us example, as an example, we because we're not that inclined, we have to learn it. But in learning it, we gain a new skill.
Very true.
And who knows, maybe our next generation, it will come naturally to them, inclusive of all the things that we've had before that came naturally to us.
Exactly.
So I would say that yes, there's a bit of both that is required, um, especially for, again, building legacy. Because as I mentioned just now, the for future generations, it's important to think of those things. It's important to, well, without getting too technical about biology and DNA, but those things tend to be encoded for the future generation. Right? I hope I answered your question, Granny. And that's all the questions that we had
Okay.
so far.
All right. Well, moving forward, moving into what we supposed to talk about today. What is a man? All right. So there are standard definitions, right? And then there are definitions that require a little more. I wouldn't say definitions. Um, I would say schools of thought
Mm.
that require a little more contemplation. Right. So let's get the generic definitions out of the way right quick. Right. The first definition I have is an adult male human being. That's from the Oxford Dictionary. Yeah. So that's it.
All right. Well, um, so that's generic.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. So,
So
so the definition that I had, which is another generic one, is a human being with a penis, a male appendage.
wow. Okay. That that was even more generic.
Also, just a little more to add a little more technical, um, a
Some
human being,
technical
a
source.
human being that has XY chromosomes.
We're getting scientific here.
But other than that, that's it.
Okay. All right. So that is why there are a lot of people walking around right now thinking that they are men, because these definitions are standard, usually biological, right? But the the human organism is very different to the lion, the tiger, the elephant, the capybara, right? Those animals are run by instinct.
Mhm.
They they go according to the call of nature, for want of a better phrase. We, on the other hand, were given a very unique ability, and that ability is the ability to think freely, right? The the gift of freedom of choice, right? And because of that, that definition is not enough for the human being, right? That definition actually puts the human being in uh in the lowest possible um state, that all we are is a human male with a penis that has XY chromosomes
Mhm.
and a beard.
Hey, not all men have
Not
beard,
like,
but
well, you see
yeah.
what going on. You see what's going on with my face. So the beard thing is the beard thing. That's kind of um subjective, right? But essentially, um, people think they are man just because they have a penis, or they have muscles, they're strong, right? But if that is all the attributes that you have, then you are no different than a gorilla, right? And I think we need to raise the standard of what a man is supposed to be now. So I wrote down some things that I think men need to have to be considered men, right? And again, like we said in our first episode, these are our opinions, everyone, right? Our opinions may resonate with some people, it may not resonate with others. but these are our opinions. Okay, so.
Before you go into the things that you wrote down, bro,
Mhm.
I have some questions for you.
Mhm.
And these are my questions. What is the difference between seeing, as in physically seeing, and perception?
Mm. Mm. Now, there are dictionary definitions to those two things,
I
right?
know.
You want the dictionary
I'm
definition?
asking you,
You're asking me.
not Oxford.
You're not asking Oxford
And
or
no.
Merriam.
Yes.
You're asking me.
Or Webster.
Or Webster.
All right.
Okay,
All
no
right,
problem.
Webby, calm
All
down.
right. Okay. So, the difference between seeing and perception. Seeing, it's just being able to gather information with your optical organs, i.e., your eyes, and that's it. Perception, however, that is seeing with a little bit of hmm, with a little bit of intuition and a dash of intelligence. That's what perception is to me, right? Um, and I think well, perception could be uh, you could perceive things with not only with your eyes, you could also perceive things with your ears as well.
Mhm.
But since we use an eyes, we just the examples that I'll use will be based on eyes. Okay.
Right.
So let's say for example, you are out.
Mhm.
Something we were talking about yesterday. You're out with your significant other. Okay. And let's say you went to a dinner at a restaurant or something. And you're leaving now and going back to your car. And you observe, you see your surroundings, right? But you perceive certain things in your surroundings that you determine to not be the safest situation if you either continue in the direction or the speed that you're continuing. And you decide that, okay, I am going to take certain decisions or take certain actions to ensure that I get my significant other home safely. The ability to have that discernment comes from the ability to perceive a situation or to perceive your surroundings effectively, right? And that's where I think that is the best way I could explain it right now. Yeah.
All right. And to follow up that question, what is the difference between perception and perspective?
Well, perspective is completely is kind of different because perspective is essentially a different way of viewing situations, right? Perspective is, for example, I use a perfect example. All of us lose a loved one.
Right.
All of us will lose loved ones. It's inevitable. Perspective is how you react to that loss. I'll give an example. When my father passed, I was very close to my father. And at the time, I felt as though I was not ready to live life live life without him. But I went on living anyway. Fast forward 8 years later, I have a different perspective on losing my father. At the time, I felt as though he was going too soon because I felt like he was supposed to teach me more things. Now I feel like, or not feel like, I know that he left at the right time. Because in order for a man to be a man, or in order for a boy to become a man, he has to go through hardship,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be physical or emotional hardship. He has to go through hardship. And losing my father at the time that I did allowed me or forced me to grow up, right? And that's a different perspective on losing my father. Some people might lose their father and or lose their mother and completely and totally give up because they can't see themselves living life without that person,
Mm-hmm.
right? But a different perspective is, okay, this person gave me everything that I need. Because especially when you're close to your parent gives you tools, is inevitable because they care about you. So they give you tools to be able to go through life successfully, right? And whether it may have been um, through accident, illness, or sudden condition, i.e., heart attack, so on. The perspective we should have is my father or my mother loved me enough to give me the tools necessary so that whether they die tomorrow or 10 years later or 20 years later, I have the tools to survive and thrive in life because of them, right? So there's where perspective comes in. Understand? Perception is different. Viewing a present situation and having a certain discernment about it, right? Um, Perspective is looking at a situation that has happened and the way you feel about the situation and the way you you think about the situation, I should say. That is perspective.
Okay. Okay. And my last question, well, so far, is what is the difference between perception again and reality?
This might get controversial because people think that reality is a general thing that everyone experiences in the same way, but that's not true. Um, whether you believe it or not, you have the ability to shape your reality and to shape your own reality. Me with $100 versus somebody else with $100, it will go. completely different ways, right? Me with $100 versus Bill Gates with $100. I'll give you an example of what that looks like. Bill Gates finding $100 is a waste of Bill Gates' time. Me finding $100 is gas in my car. Why is it a waste of Bill Gates' time? Because based on Bill Gates' net worth, he makes, if I remember correctly, 900 US dollars per second. So by him stopping to pick up 100, he's losing money. It's a waste of his time. That's his reality. My reality is different. I find $100, that's money I didn't have that I can use. If Bill Gates picks up that $100, he loses. That's the difference, right? 500 children might go to the same school, but 6 would get scholarships. Another 12 may not even average 50. Was why? Why is that? Why is that happening? We have the same teachers. We're in the same class at the same amount of time for the same amount of years. What's the difference between the person that wins the scholarship versus the person that doesn't get anything, or even the person that drops out? Is what we do that shapes our reality. Is our perception that shapes our reality. Is our perspective on the situation that shapes our reality. You know, some people may not like being in a particular teacher's class, and they might say, I'm not going to do anything because I don't like this teacher. And then another person would say, they don't like it, they don't like the teacher either.
Right.
But they would say, I don't like this person, so I don't want to see them again. So I'm going to make sure I do the best that I could to get out of this person's class.
Right.
So one fails and has to repeat, and the other one goes on. Same situation, two different realities, right? So again, perspective, perception is what makes the difference between my reality and your reality and everyone else's reality. Right? Yeah.
Right. So that's all the questions I've had so far.
Okay. Okay. Cool. So we're going to get into what I believe. And by the way, perception, perspective, all of those things, qualities that everyone, not just men, but everyone needs to have. Right. So let me get into the qualities that I think men should have to be considered a man. First thing you need awareness. And I'm not talking about awareness in general, like, but firstly, self-awareness. You need to know who you are. If you do not know who you are, and I'm not just saying, who are you? I'm Ronald. Okay, what does that mean? Well, I'm from Pity Valley in Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, that does not tell me who you are. That's what you're gonna tell a girl when you go on a date?
worst date
Exactly.
ever.
Right? If I told my girlfriend that on the first date that we went on, she wouldn't be my girlfriend. So, guys, self-awareness. If you've never done it, remove yourself from everyone, and look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, who am I? I guarantee you it's going to frighten you because you never checked. And because you never checked, the person that you're going to find is going to be someone very broken, someone who was trying to uh, please people, who was trying to make everybody else happy except himself, to the point that he doesn't even know who he is. And he thinks he knows because people tell him who he is, but he's never told himself who he is. So his he's playing a character that was written by somebody else. And that's a lot of people, man. And I think people need to make the difficult decision to look themselves in the face and ask the question, who am I?
And to add, bro, again, without self defense,
Without self-defense.
stop lying to yourself, first and foremost.
And stop defending your flaws. Because listen, you're not going to improve. You're not going to improve if you keep saying, nah, nothing's wrong with that. We need to be self-aware. We need to be honest with ourselves. We need to stop like just nonchalantly accepting our flaws and just saying, nothing's wrong with that. That's the reason why we in the situation that we in. We're not honest. And we have to learn to be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
Another thing is honor. What is honor? What do you think honor is? Because we don't hear it much anymore.
No,
We don't hear
no.
it much anymore. So what do you think honor is?
Honor. When I hear honor, I think of so the picture that comes to mind is samurai.
Mm.
All right. The reason why it comes to mind is they always pride themselves on honor. They always mention the word honor. And when it's absent, they reprimand you for it for sure.
And there's only one reprimand.
Agreed. And so, using that visualization and what they talk about, honor is upholding, for want of a better phrase, your word, your character. It is upholding certain values, certain morals, and behaviors. one, well, all those things that reflect strength,
So essentially, your image.
your image.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you suppose. So essentially, honor represents the qualities of a good image, right? And it takes time to build that, but it can fall in a second,
very much so.
right? And a lot of guys don't have honor. You know, that is the reason why we have what we have right now. We have men that just look at politics. I'm not talking about in our country alone. I'm talking about globally. Just look at politics. Politicians lie
Yet
every
still,
day.
they call themselves honorable.
Yes, and they call themselves honorable and so on. But in my opinion, you should not be allowed to carry a title like that when you you lie to the people that you represent. Right? Uh, those in those in the military, those in medicine, in business. At the end of the day, when all you have is maybe your mind, that's all you have left. Your wife might have passed away already. You may have lost everything. Right? Some people are fortunate to not lose everything, but some, unfortunately, have lost everything. What do you have when you've lost everything? If you never had honor, then you have nothing. So, apart from self awareness, have to work on your honor, have to work on your image, your reputation, right? Because if you lose everything, no one, and I mean no one, is going to respect you. They're not going to help you. They're not going to give you a chance to get back to where you were. Because when you had it, you had no honor. You had no respect for anyone. Your reputation was tainted. Your image was muddy. So no one wants you to get back to that level. So they're going to keep you in the darkness. So some people may think that that will never happen to them, but I will always say, I've said it before and I will always say it, never say never. So self-awareness first, yes, but when you've become aware of self,
Honor.
learn to develop your honor, right? Another thing, you just mentioned it, honesty, man.
Yeah,
We're not honest these days. We're not honest with ourselves. We're not honest with our peers. We're not honest with women. We're not honest with anything right now.
hmm,
Right? Let's deal with the honesty in dating women, so on. Not everyone is cut out for marriage. Not everyone is cut out for um, having one woman, right? But here's what: if we be honest about it, life would be much easier. How about we say this? You meet a girl, you like her, she likes you, but you are not the kind of person that likes to commit. You have you have an insatiable appetite. If we be honest and say, listen, I like you, I think you're attractive, I think you're a beautiful woman. However, I'm not one for relationship. I like having fun. Um, if you have no problems with that, then we could hang out. But know that I'm not for commitment. If the person obliges and then says that they want to be with you, but then you would have had um, your disclaimer in the beginning. So even if they get angry and say so on and so forth, you will always have a disclaimer because you were honest from the start. You said that you weren't interested in committing in a committed relationship, but they still chose to put themselves with you, right? What's going on now is, Gil, I want to be with you and only you. You are the apple of my eye. Mine. No one else is mine. And there's no one that could take your place.
Most granulacious of my sugars.
Of course. Any more granulated and it'll be powdered.
Anything better than you spoil.
Oh gosh, yeah. So here's the thing. They said that to her and 16 others.
Hmm.
And now you have to juggle, right? Because you told that to 16 other women. And the 16 other women think that they're the only one.
I hope you like being in the circus because you're looking like a clown.
So, guys, at some point the shoe will be on the other foot. So, and remember, women bend, men break. Women bend, men break.
Facts.
A woman could take and take and take and take and take until they can't take anymore, and then they'll just leave. Or they'll take and then give you back some of what you gave them. But here's the difference: when a man receives what they give out, they can't bend. They can't bend. They they break into pieces, right? And they, well, the modern ones now, what we've been seeing, they tend to become very violent with themselves and with other women. So what we saw it last week.
Mhm.
Someone killed himself and killed his spouse and himself.
Yeah.
Then someone else killed.
Over the past couple of
Over
weeks,
the past
we've
couple
been
of weeks,
seeing that.
we've been seeing a lot of them. Right? Why is that? You know, in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, the man was doing the most dirt, And then when the woman decided to do it, he couldn't take it. Snap.
Mhm.
Right? Now there are other cases which we're going to talk about in other episodes. Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry, guys. We're not only on the women's side. Don't worry. But we're just talking about honesty as it relates to men now. Right? That's in the relationship side. In the societal sense. Be good for your word, guys. Your word is bond. There's your word is bond. That is something that we should take seriously. That verbal contract, as a man, we have to take that seriously again.
You know, as you say that, bro, if I remember correctly, there was a time, maybe not so long ago, maybe long ago, given all that has happened so far, our word, especially as men, was paramount. Even before paperwork, before contracts, there was verbal contracts. And we, like many other things, we have lost it.
Guys, be good for your word. Being good for your word opens many doors for you. Right? The day you start being good for your word, saying that you'll do something and actually do it, trust me, it's going to open doors that would have never been open. So see, all of that part, that's part of honesty, right? There's also part of integrity. Right? Being good for your word, saying that you're going to do something and doing it. All right. I have plenty more qualities, plenty more. Right? Might have to do a part two because the amount of things we have already an hour and 44 minutes in.
About that.
Right? We might have to do a part two. We might have to do a what is a man part two
Part two.
because we have a lot of stuff here, man. Right? Health.
Health.
Health. Men are notoriously bad when it comes to their health. We, as a population, do not pay attention to our health at all. Right? The kind of things we see people doing as it relates to their health.
And
Sometimes,
not just food.
and not just food, not just food. The sexual health as well,
Mental health.
the mental health. Guys, take care of your mental health, man. All right. And I know we say, I don't need nobody to tell me how I'm feeling. I don't need anyone to tell me how I'm feeling. Okay. But
No problem.
it's going to come up, it's going to keep coming up. That's the thing about life. When you have a lesson to learn and you refuse to learn it, it will keep coming up. And you will always ask yourself, why is this happening to me?
Facts.
And then you don't even try to figure that out. You just settle for what's happened. Let me give a tip. The thought process that got you into the situation will never be the same thought process that's going to get you out of it. So please, for your sake, Develop some humility, which is also a quality that we should have as men. Develop some humility and seek help. There are psychologists all around the world, counselors all around the world that are there to help you. Seek help if you need it, because the lesson is going to keep coming up and it's not going to go away, right? That's mental health, sexual health. Guys, again, promiscuity. Listen, apart from the apart from the sexually transmitted diseases and the sexually transmitted infections and so on, apart from those, there's something called sexual energy, in case you don't know. And if you waste it, you shorten your life. I'm sure a lot of us have struggled with it, right? But when you waste a sexual energy, you shorten your life.
So when you say wasting sexual energy, right, bro? What you mean by that?
Now, if I answer that, we're going to start going down a rabbit hole, right? And as a matter of fact, I think that that topic is a Patreon topic,
All right.
right? That, guys, we are also on Patreon. That is our membership only platform, right? Um, we are working on the details for that, but that will be launching soon. But that topic there, that's a Patreon topic. We can't put that one on YouTube. All
Be
right.
sure to check it out, guys.
So yeah, so we leave that one. We leave that one for now. Right. But physical health, your diet. You can't eat KFC and McDonald's and Burger King
And drink Coke
and drink Coca-Cola
every day,
and other soft drinks every day.
multiple times a day.
Right. Especially if you have children. You need to, yeah, you would want to, I think you should want to give your children as much of you for as long as possible, right? As a father, as a husband, we have to be selfless. And we're going to talk about that, being a husband and wife and so on and so forth. I know a lot of people will have comments about husband and wife and selfless and so on, right? Again, we have all of those. We have episodes for the rest of the year, and all of them are going to touch on that, on those things. So don't worry, just bear with us for now, right?
So I'd like to ask, since we're on that point of selfless, bro, um, would you say for a man, a father, someone who has children, that for them not taking care of yourself, in whether it be physically, mentally, and even spiritually, would you say that that is selfish behavior?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say that because sometimes situations happen. You know, we didn't plan to have children. The children are here. We have to take care of them,
Right.
right? However, we need to understand that we did certain things for the children to get here, right?
And nobody put a gun to our head.
No one put a gun to our head, right? The children are here now. So now, whether you were planning for it or not, your life now has to change.
Sorry, let me and also include, at least we're talking about the situations that happen by choice and not through other acts.
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead, bro.
Yeah, we're not talking about the unfortunate situation with our sisters out there, right? We understand those things happen, okay? But we're talking about the situations that where there is consent, okay?
Mhm.
As a man, you need to realize that okay, I have certain responsibilities now, and there are things that I used to do that I shouldn't do anymore, right? If I was a horrible eater, I was a avid alcohol drinker. With children now, I think it's important that I change that because I want to give my children the best version of myself that I could possibly give, or I should want to give my children the best possible version of myself that I can give
Mm.
for as long as possible.
What about smoker?
That too, that too, because again, we know the adverse effects of smoking cigarettes and even the herb,
Marijuana?
Mary Jane, marijuana, right? Look, guys, everyone has their vices, but listen, we have to be intelligent about them. Okay, we have to be intelligent about them. We're not we're not on a pedestal talking down at you guys, right? Because we struggle with things too. We have our flaws too, right? We nowhere near perfect, right? We're ambitious, trying to get to a certain level in life, right? And we have things that we need to fix about ourselves. But we're just telling you that these are the things that we are observing from our peers, from people from the generation before, from the generation just after us. We're seeing it, and we're saying that listen, this needs to either slow down or stop, preferably stop, but at least slow down because we're going to lose in the long term, not just as men but as a society.
Yeah.
So we need to now be responsible and make certain decisions that would put us and our children in the best possible position to be successful in the future. So guys, we still have a lot to talk about, so we have to do a part two,
Part two.
right? So thank you all again for being here. Thank you all again for listening. It is the conversation is going well,
It is.
right?
It is really going well. It's flowing.
This flowing, the journey has begun, right? And we're going all the way to the end. All right.
Yes. So thank you
So
all again for
thank you
joining
all again
us.
for joining us. Stay tuned for part two of episode 2. Right? And we look forward to seeing you all next week.
Next week.
Take care.
Yeah.